back in 1994, 95, I first got on the internet as far as I started looking up pro wrestling and kind of found the whole tape trader thing. One of the first tapes I ever got was a tape that had just entitled "The Best of Japan," which doesn't mean a lot because there was probably thousands of tapes at the time called "The Best of Japan." It just kind of depended on where you got it from as far as who you get it from, because it was that person's opinion of what the best from Japan was. Now, I was a big Great Muta fan. I knew that Great Muta wrestled in Japan as Keiji Muto, and he was on. There was a couple of his matches on this tape, and so I got the tape because I'd also always heard that Japanese wrestling was so good. And as I was watching the matches, and there was lots of other matches on there, there was this one guy that was on the shows with matches, and he wasn't as impressive looking as some of the other guys. A lot of the guys were bigger. A lot of the guys had a little bit better physiques. Japanese physiques have always been, as far as what they expected their wrestlers to look like, always a little bit different than in the U.S. But even he was a little different even from that. He didn't just look all that impressive. Then the guy started to wrestle, and this is when it became very apparent that he was very impressive. And as time went on, I watched more and more of his matches, and luckily, him and the gentleman that joined him in the ring, literally, to steal a phrase from my good friend Chase, C-Dude on here, ruined pro wrestling for me, and that was Misawa. I had seen Misawa wrestle numerous times. I've seen most of his matches, I think, at least most of the ones that I think most people have seen or heard about. I've seen almost all the ones I think most people have heard about. And as time went on, I became a bigger and bigger fan, and it was kind of weird because I was right there as his legend grew. And so I was fairly shocked this morning while I was at work, and I got a text message from Chase telling me to go to Figure 4 Online immediately. And so I got on my phone, and I went to this website, wondering what I was going to see, wondering, what big news, shocking thing had happened. And I was stunned to hear that Misawa had died in the ring, apparently from a back suplex, a very not even dangerous back suplex, which is even more amazing considering the dangerous back suplexes Misawa had taken over the years. And with that, he was gone. And all I could think about was the fact that here was a guy that I had watched brutalize himself and brutalize others, and now he was gone, and what that would mean for pro wrestling, for more reasons than one, I should say. Like I said, I had watched him for a very long time. I'd watched his matches with Taue and Kobashi and Kawada, particularly Kawada, who I was always a really big fan of as well, and still am. And I was one of those people that probably a lot of other people were, that always felt like Misawa would always be there. That here was this guy who was this legit badass who could take these insane bumps and just keep on trucking. And, so it was a bit amazing to read that, and sad at the same time. This was a guy that I was a very huge fan of. Anyone that knows me well knows that. When I first got on YouTube and I first started talking to people outside of YouTube and just chatting with people and that sort of thing, I always brought up Misawa, and people would always ask me, the best matches I'd seen and matches I'd recommend, and that's where Chase comes in, because Chase at the time, I think, was 16, and he was asking me, he goes, what do you think, he was asking me about stuff I should get, and so I was telling him, and about 4 weeks passed, and he watched 2 matches in particular, and after the first match, which was a singles match, he said, "You just ruined pro wrestling for me forever." And then he watched a tag match, and he said, "You just ruined tag team wrestling for me forever as well, because in his mind, no two matches would ever live up to what those were. And often, when I was watching Misawa stuff, particularly All Japan 90s stuff, I always felt that way, that I had just seen something that could not be topped. And give it a year, 2 years later, and the same guys would go out there and somehow they would top it in some weird and fabulous way. So, you know, a lot of people probably don't know of him, or know of him, but have never actually seen his matches, and that's kind of sad, in my opinion, because this guy was one of the best wrestlers, in my opinion, of all time, and I don't say that lightly. This was a guy that, during the 90s, would probably be considered the best wrestler of the 90s, and this, you know, that would include Ric Flair, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, anyone you want. I think most people that have seen all of his stuff during the 90s would say that he was on top at that point, and he was probably the best wrestler. I wouldn't say the biggest star. Austin was probably the bigger star, arguably, but, you know, Misawa was that good, particularly in ring. The stuff he could do, the stuff that could be done to him, was often amazing and awe-inspiring. And there's an entire generation of American wrestlers who grew up wanting to be Misawa, seeing what this guy could do, seeing the types of matches he could do, just looking around and seeing what this Japanese guy could do to just a bunch of guys standing around a TV set watching. I had friends. My best friend doesn't even like pro wrestling, and I had him watch a Misawa match with me once, and he was totally into it. You know, to the point where he was just going crazy, because he said, "My God, I wish they would wrestle like that here." And when I say he ruined pro wrestling for me, that's what I mean, is that whenever I see a pro wrestler, whenever I see a match, that is ultimately what I want, even though I'm not going to get, is that early, or the, you know, that 90s All Japan style that is far too brutal for, you know, anyone to probably do for a long stretch of time, but is just so amazing to watch that you want to see it. It's very sad to see Misawa go. He did die in the ring. I know some people would say, well, maybe that's the way he wanted to go. I don't know. I think that's hard to say. I think that's a bit naive to say. But, you know, maybe it was. Maybe that is the way he wanted to go. But I wouldn't necessarily say that. I will say this, that realize that Rikidozan, when he died, and when Baba died, that Japanese pro wrestling changed after each guy died, for good, better, whatever. But it did change, and I think if you follow Japanese wrestling, if you just even a little bit, you know kind of what's going on in Japanese wrestling right now. I could see the same thing happening on both ways, good and bad. His death could bring about a change that would be good for Japanese pro wrestling, and also bad for Japanese pro wrestling in some regards as well. We have to kind of wait and see, but I think to even mention his name with those two gentlemen is impressive in and of itself. You know, I couldn't do any more justice than say just go and check out some of his matches, enjoy his matches, because many of them are amazing. Many of them are truly spectacular. I know some people think that, I've heard some people say, well, he's just overrated and people just, you know, think he's that good, because Dave Meltzer always said he was that good. And I agree that a lot of people probably found out about him because of that, but I know very few people have ever seen one of those matches that, or any of his matches, particularly the truly great ones, that didn't just come back just awestruck, and just like, what did I just see, and where can I see more of it? And I think that is very important. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to make jokes about the fact that if you know anything about The Observer, whenever a wrestler dies, there's these big long bios. And Dave, of course, is a big fan. I don't think that's too much of a shock to anybody of Misawa's. A very big fan. And I'm sure that we'll get a very long and in-depth observer because of it. It might be a 3-page bio because, or a 3-issue bio. But to be honest, who cares? You know, and I'm sure there will be people on the internet who will, you know, have little snide remarks about it. But I would compare it to, you know, somebody asking Bob Costas to write a bio on Mickey Mantle. If you know anything about Bob Costas, and you know anything about his relationship and his just love affair, really, as a fan of Mickey Mantle, you know that you know it would be almost a book, and if that's the case, so be it. So I would say that, but I don't know why I just went on a rant on that about that. But anyways, yeah, I guess that's just about all I have to say. You know, because a lot of people, I'm shocked as I've been reading over things while I was at work. I was on my phone and reading over comments that people had left and that sort of thing, and just how many people had never really seen his matches, knew about him, but had never really seen a lot of his matches. And that kind of shocked me. But if you've never seen one of his matches, I definitely recommend checking them out. They're amazing. Most of his matches, even when he was past his prime. I mean, you know, those lucky sons of bitches that got to see him in New York City, and him and Kenta, and him able to just bring forth that one great match for those, you know, 1,500 fans in New York City, I think showed that he had a fan base here, a fan base that had wanted to see him for so long and felt like, you know, he owed them something. I mean, he went out there and put on a match that was, you know, you would think he would put on at Budokan Hall. So, in a lot of ways. So, you know, those people got to see him live. And the one thing I would say, you know, as a wrestling fan, there's very few things that I just, you know, I totally just kind of like, I wish I'd been able to do that. And one of the things I really wish I'd been able to do now, because I'd always planned on going to Japan. I always planned on seeing Misawa live one time in Japan, just to say that I'd seen him live in Japan at least one time, even if he was way past his prime, even if he was a shadow of his former self. It was that important to me as a wrestling fan. It was that important to me. So, you know, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to affect. I think the Japanese industry in some way. You know, and it's going to be in a big way, either good or bad. And we'll just have to wait and see. But, you know, and the other sad part about it is, you know, the WWE definitely will not talk about it on their shows. I don't expect them to talk about it. And, you know, TNA might, but, you know, I mean, to be honest, if TNA does, it'll seem kind of disingenuous to me, and just kind of like that they're trying to, you know, just kind of please, you know, kind of the smart fans in a lot of ways. You just kind of say, see, we'll do something that WWE won't. I hate to say that because, I mean, they might do it for genuine reasons, but if you're going to do it for genuine reasons, then actually do it for genuine reasons, and, you know, actually talk about him and really give him a legitimate tribute, which I doubt we would get. So, all that said, he will be missed. He will be missed in a very big way, I think, by many, many fans. And I know I got a lot of emails asking if I was going to do a video about this, and of course I was. I don't do a lot of videos when, you know, people die. I think I've done 3. I think this is the 3rd one I've ever done. But, yeah, that's, you know, is what it is, I guess. But, yeah, no intro, no nothing like that. I think my video's lagging as well, but I really don't care. I don't want to do this video again. I wasn't looking forward to doing this video the first time. So, it is what it is. But anyways, with that, I'm out, and later.